All right. Looks like we're live. I'm gonna wait for the stream to load so I can get this where it needs to go. Right. Just getting the stream set up. We've got about a minute to go, and then I'll be diving in for you guys. There we go. All right. Well, welcome. If you're here and you can hear me, give me like a thumbs up or a comment. Let me know I'm coming through okay. And we'll wait till 2:15 hits to dive in. I'm excited. Very excited. All right. So while we're waiting, those of you who are on the email list, if you have signed up for the 4 pillars, you should have a worksheet for today. And if you haven't done that, go ahead and go grab those worksheets. So sign up here and you can get those worksheets for free. So if you haven't done that yet, we will deliver those right to you. But today's worksheet is day 2, balance and boundaries. All right, it's 2:15. So welcome everybody to today's live. This is day 2 of the 4 pillars of a balanced, fulfilling, profitable, and balanced practice. Today, we're going to be talking all about balance and boundaries. We're going to talk about how creating balance and setting values-aligned boundaries leads to better income, outcomes, and impact, how it's good for both you and for your clients. So again, if you're here live, say hello in the comments, give me like a thumbs up or something. Let me know that I'm coming through okay, that you can hear me. If you're catching the replay, comment #replay. All right, so before we dive in, I want to share a little bit about how I came to this point of really focusing on balance as a foundation for a successful practice. Before I had kids, I was working at an agency job that I actually really liked. I had a good job. It didn't pay great, but there was balance there. There was respect for my time, and there was a sense of autonomy that I had. And I really appreciated that I was given the ability to create a schedule that worked for me and for my life, for my family. At the time, it was just me and my husband. He was new in law enforcement and his schedule was all over the place. And so I had the flexibility to be available. Now, I was underpaid, but it was a really supportive environment, which is a rarity for an agency job. I had time and flexibility to accommodate my husband's career and also my own interests. Then we had twins. So we were fortunate to get pregnant and we ended up having surprise twins. And I had planned on returning because I was really looking forward to supervising. I was looking forward to becoming a director for the clinical program, and that was exciting for me. But I realized that going back to that agency job wasn't going to work. Between the schedule and the pay, it just didn't make sense. Honestly, I probably wouldn't even have taken any money home because the pay was so poor. They did their best to make it work, but it just didn't work. And so when I realized that, I was also very aware that I couldn't do things the usual way. I was struggling with postpartum rage and depression. I was a primary parent because my spouse had an incredibly demanding career between law enforcement and being a reservist. He just wasn't that available. And I knew that I was going to be the primary parent. And I knew that I couldn't sacrifice myself. So between having the postpartum rage and depression and having a spouse that was very overwhelmed with his work, I realized pretty quickly that like building a practice, the way that I had usually had seen it done wasn't going to work for me. I knew that I needed to create a system that prioritized me and my self-care first in order for me to be able to be available for my children. And I needed to define the boundaries of my time and capacity to prevent stretching myself too thin. I was a big fan of balance before this, but having these twins and being confronted with this really forced me to get serious about how I created balance in my life and how the demands of my life dictated how I created balance in my life. Now, I want to talk a bit about the word balance because I think it gets a little bit of a bad rap sometimes. I think sometimes we look at it as this unachievable, unattainable standard when really it's not something that you just achieve and then stay at. Balance is a dynamic thing. It's adaptive. It's evolving, right? If you stand on one foot, you're always adjusting. Your muscles in your feet are like moving around to support yourself and to keep you in balance, right? I recently started yoga again, and the little muscles in my feet are just working so hard because I'm challenging them in a new way. And so when we think about balance, think about it from this place, not of this static place that we achieve, not this achievement and then we've locked it in, but as this dynamic, adaptive, ever changing and ever evolving thing that will follow us, that will ebb and flow, that will flux, that will move over time. And sometimes we'll be out of balance and wobbling more. Sometimes we will fall down and we'll get back up when we find balance again. So balance is this dynamic process that we continue to work with over time. Your needs, your wants, and your values are going to inform your boundaries, and your boundaries are going to keep you in balance. So that's why the boundaries are so important here. Yesterday, we talked about creating a vision for your life, and I hope that you dreamed big on that because I think it's so important to think about what you want for your life and for your practice because these things work together. It may have included things like taking Fridays off, picking your kids up from school every day, scheduling an hour each morning just to read or something like that. So whatever it looks like for you, the things that we discovered yesterday about what you want for your life and your practice are going to inform how you create your schedule and your boundaries to keep you balanced. We need to account for how our priorities, needs, wants, etc. show up on our schedule, not just our work, right? Not just the have-tos, but the needs and the wants and priorities. Now, how is this connected to client care? Because we've talked about, this is supposed to improve client outcomes, right? Self-care, I said this yesterday, self-care is client care. We know that when you take care of yourself, you have better client outcomes. There's research to support this. So self-care is part of our work and should be included in our work day, right? Some of your self-care activities might not be a tax write-off, but they are definitely something that improves your ability to function as a therapist. And I believe that they should be included in what you consider to be your mandate for your work, and therefore in your work day. You discovered yesterday that you are a better therapist when you take care of yourself. That is a question I like to ask people. You are a better therapist when? I am a better therapist when I have something left to give, when I don't overschedule myself, when I have time off, when I'm able to do the hobbies that I enjoy, right? By and large, the things that make you a better therapist are the things that also take care of your well-being. We also know that unless we account for it on a daily basis or weekly basis, that it probably won't happen. The whole, I'll get to it when I have time. I'll exercise when I have time. It's like, wow, we all know that usually that means you're not going to have time because there's always more to do. And so unless it goes on the calendar, unless it becomes protected time, it probably isn't going to happen. Your boundaries protect the integrity of your clinical care because it supports your well-being. If your boundaries are being crossed in your business, either because you're ignoring a need or you haven't defined it, it's going to show up in your therapy and in your life, right? How many of you have had that moment where you start to feel resentment toward a client because something crossed a boundary that maybe you didn't realize you needed, a boundary that maybe you slid too far on, a boundary that you didn't hold yourself because you were worried about how it would come across to the client, or you were worried how it would affect your business. I know I've done that. I've definitely done that, right? And it informs what I need to do differently next time or the boundaries that I need to set up for myself. So today you're going to outline your ideal week and you're going to build in your self-care. You're going to discover your ideal client load and you're going to account for all the aspects of running your business in your working time. We need to build it in. We need to build in the needs and the wants first and then allocate time for work. So a lot of folks, when they build their schedule, they build it from a work first, life second perspective. And especially if we're coming out of agency life where we are dictated when and how we're going to work, we have to build our life that way. But you are a business owner. And when you own your own business, you get to dictate how it works. You get to decide. And so you get to decide what you need first and then where work fits. So today you're going to look at how you need your life to fit first, and then you're going to fit work inside of that. You're going to map out the things on your calendar that are for you first, for your family, the things that cannot be moved. I can't change what time my kids need to be picked up or dropped off from school. That's not up to me. What I can do is build a schedule around those necessities that takes care of me. All right. So we only have so many hours in a day. By mapping this stuff on a calendar, we can be realistic about what's possible and not expect ourselves to do too much or hold ourselves to unrealistic expectation. Who here tends to hold themselves to unrealistic expectations? Right? I think I can do so much more than is realistically possible in a day. And maybe on like my best day, I could totally do that. When nothing goes wrong and everything's in place and everything goes as planned and nobody gets sick and nobody has trouble putting their shoes on in the morning as they get out the door, maybe I can get it all done that day. But that is not my everyday. That is not reality, right? Reality is messy. Reality has hiccups. Reality has kids with sensory problems who don't like socks, but don't want to wear those shoes without socks, but won't wear the socks because they have threads in them, right? And so life is messy and it's going to get in the way. Putting this stuff on paper confronts us with that tendency to overestimate our capacity and do too much. Always feel like we're failing, always feel like we're falling behind because we have this misconception that other people are doing it all. And guess what? No one's doing it all. That is not real and it is not possible. I had to get very real about what I was capable of doing and what I had to let go of and the expectations that I was holding on to as a mother, as a woman, as a therapist. I had to get very real about that. And when I put it on paper, I was able to tangibly see what was possible and what I needed to reconsider or let go of. What's great is that when we create something that works for us, that takes into account our realities, our limitations, our needs, our wants, and creates a foundation for dynamic balance, it creates this foundation for us to be able to ebb and flow with the demands of life in a way that honors our needs and allows us to continue to show up well for ourselves, for our families, for our clients. And again, it's not that we're going to have this perfect schedule each week. It's the foundation for making decisions about what's priorities, what boundaries are firm and which ones are flexible, right? So I might map out this ideal week and I'm going to have certain boundaries that are inflexible and I have certain boundaries that are flexible. And that is a dynamic aspect of balance. Certain things are going to be movable and that's okay. And you get to decide which ones. Again, I cannot decide when my kids need to be picked up or dropped off. That is not flexible. I can decide whether I work out in the morning or the afternoon. Whether or not I work out is also not negotiable. But when I do it, can be flexible, as long as it still stays there and it happens in a way that feels good to me. Having it mapped out on paper also gives us a tangible representation of our values-driven time goals and priorities and how it shows up in our daily lives. And what I mean by this is that if it goes on the calendar, then it matters. If it matters, it goes on the calendar. What are some of the things that matter to you enough that they must go on the calendar? Tell me in the comments. What are some of those things? For me, that's drop-offs and pickups. That means no working on the evenings and weekends. My husband is not available to be dependable childcare on the evenings and weekends. He could be called out any day, anytime. So I cannot plan to work on the evenings and weekends. I can barely answer an email, right? Gym time. My gym time, which is part of my huge essential self-care, has to happen while my kids are in school because it won't happen when they're out. So it has to be built into my day. I'm also aware that it won't happen unless certain conditions are met. And so either I'm doing it on the way home from picking them up, or I'm attending a class that I committed to and signed up for. My time, my personal time, also needs to happen by and large when my kids are in school. I want to have flex time for the unknown and the unknowable. So I build in buffer zones. And it is evolving. It has evolved and it will continue to evolve, right? What this looked like when my kids were 6 months old and I was breastfeeding full time is different now that they are almost 5 and headed into transitional kindergarten. It looks different. By defining our ideal schedule, we also find out how many clients per week we can see and be well. Now, notice I didn't say we can see, I added and be well. And that is a very important distinction because we can pack 5 or 6 clients in a day and be fried. Or we can see 4 or 5 maybe and feel okay, right? Again, those numbers, they're up to you. I don't want you to see how many clients can I see at maximum. It's how many clients can I see in a day and in a week and be well and feel good when I leave work. That in turn helps us calculate our fees. Now that's going to be the next one. We'll talk about fees tomorrow. But when we build our practice around our life first, it then dictates how our practice needs to look. It tells us what boundaries we need to have in our practice based on our life, not someone else's. So putting it on paper, mapping out your schedule will help you figure out what the boundaries are, what they need to look like, what time you have available to work. And by work, I don't just mean clients, right? We need to include all the aspects of work. And you're going to do this on the worksheet. All the things that you do in your workday that are involved with managing a business and being a therapist, those need to be included in your working hours, right? If you're doing notes on the weekends, if you're struggling to keep up with the administrative side of things, then chances are you're seeing too many clients or you haven't allocated the right amount of time for your work. So working from a life first perspective, you take care of yourself first, you build the work into that, and self-care is built in a way that is dynamic and flexible. So based on what you come up with today, we're going to be talking about fees tomorrow. I'm super excited about it. Money and fees is one of my favorite topics. Let me know what you think. Let me know what came up for you. Let me know if you have any aha moments or takeaways. Drop them in the comments, comment in the group, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.